Hello there, welcome to this video. In this video we will be experimenting with two properties, the float and the clear property. The float property is used to specify the direction of movement of an HTML element. The values you can specify using the float is left, right, none, or inherit. Left means you want the element to float left. Right means you want the element to float right. None means you want no float. Inherit means inherit the float from the container or the parent element. The clear property is used to control the behavior of that floating element. It specifies which direction the floating element can go. So if you floated an element to the left, the clear property is used to remove that obstruction on the left so that other elements can float to the left as well. I've got my sample web page on the right and I've got my CSS here. I've got a couple of images there and they have been specified in the order they've been laid out on the HTML code on the left here. So by default, when you specify images on the HTML code, they appear in the order of the code. So the tulip appears first and then the penguins next. So this is how they'll be laid out without any CSS. Now I can use CSS to position this. Let me open this. You see they're stacked up next together. So I can float this second image here and tell it to go to the right, and it will go to the far right. And I'll tell this image here is already on the left. I can either tell it to move to the left or leave it there and just tell this to move to the right. So let's use the float property and see how that works. All right, so this is a piece of code, right? So the IMG image, which is the ID here, these are the selectors. So the float is the property, and I've told the first image here to float to the left, and I've told the second image to float to the right. So if I refresh, you'll see that. Expand that, see it's gone to the far right, and this is stayed on the left. What happens if I want this penguin to come underneath the tulip? So what I need to do is change the direction of the float. So I've now changed the direction of the float to specify the penguin to float left as well. So if I refresh, you see that it hasn't come underneath. The reason the penguin has not come under this is because the tulip has been floated to the left and there's an obstruction here. So we'll now use the clear property to clear the obstruction here to allow the penguin to come underneath there. So to do that, you use the clear property. See, I have now specified the clear property inside the image 2. So I've told it to clear any obstruction on the left. So it will remove that obstruction and it should float underneath. You see that? So it's now come underneath rather than this. And we achieved that using the clear property. The clear property removed the obstruction caused by floating the tulip to the left. So if I wanted to create some space between the images, I'll use a margin to achieve that. But this video is just focusing on float and clear. I've got another example here. I've got the image of the tulip and I've got some text here. So they've appeared the way they've appeared in the HTML code. See, the images appeared first and then the paragraph there. So this is how they've appeared. So if I wanted the image, if I floated this image to the left, it will create an obstruction underneath. So this paragraph will now jump here, will now come next to the image because it can't be here anymore because I've floated this and there's an obstruction there. For this to stay here, I'll need to use the clear property to keep it there. But I prefer the text to be next to the image. So what I'll do, I'll use the float property to move the image to the left, create an obstruction underneath, and then this will force this text next to it. So let's do that. So I remove my my image comment. So if I save that, so the image now will go to the left, force this here. You see that? It's forced, because it's floated to the left, it's created an obstruction underneath it, that hereby forcing the text that was underneath to come next to it, horizontal. All right, so you can always create a space between the image and the text using the margin or margin property. So this is another example of how you can use the float to wrap text around an image or next to an image. If I wanted to force this text underneath here, underneath the tulip, all I need to do is just use the clear property, and that will remove the obstruction and the text will come back underneath. So let's test that. So I remove the comments. So I've used the clear property and giving it a value of left. So I want the obstruction on the left cleared, and it will come back there. So save that and refresh. See, the text has come underneath because I've cleared the obstruction caused by floating this to the left. So when using the float property, you can float to the left, to the right, none, inherit. When using the clear property, you can clear obstruction on the left, the right, you can specify both. That means you want obstruction cleared from both left and right. Also, you can specify none or inherit. In this video, we went through using the clear and the float property, and we know that the float is used to move an element in a certain direction, and the clear property is used to clear the obstruction caused by that floating. I hope this video has been useful. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.